Hello guys, and welcome back to Joe's Ventures, and today we're doing another episode of our Jurassic World Evolution Accurate Dinosaur Mod Collection. We take a look at a bunch of different animals and compare them to their real fossil life counterparts. So lots of these mods made by all sorts of cool people, and we're on part 23, so I've got 29 parts that I want to do overall from this Jurassic World Evolution mod collection for the first game, and then we'll get stuck into the second game. So hopefully I can finish that before the second game comes out. But it is what it is. I might not, but it's not like I'm on a particular deadline. But that's okay. So we're going to be starting today with a couple remakes. I know we do a couple remakes occasionally, since we've had all these new species. Now we're going to have comics again. We used to always do the remakes. But now we're having a look at Chungkingosaurus. So there's another remake done by MrTroodon. So really nice guy here. He's probably going to go for a feed.
Welcome to the park.
Let's wait for him to stop and have a feed. So yeah, this is our first dinosaur of the day, Chungkingosaurus. So you can see some of the changes that have been going on. So we'll go over some of the changes. This is not too majorly different. You can see it's got this kind of cool little osteoderms on the back here, and we got the thagomizers. So we know, I think we have 8 here. There's a couple specimens that we have that can suggest kind of 2 to 3 pairs. So there's 2 pairs that have been definitely preserved, but there may be a third, and it's kind of been described as like a pin cushion array on the thagomizers. So I think that's really interesting. We can see it's a little bit more speculative here with 8. I think there is some stegosaurs with a lot of variation within their thagomizers. Some, like Uruguaynathus, has like a little tail club along with some thagomizers. Some have quite a few of these. This classic Stegosaurus really only has 2 pairs, which is still cool regardless. And then you can see they've got about 14 plates. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so probably about 14 plates on the back. I'm not sure if I counted correctly, but 14 plates there, along with this really nice shoulder spike there. Really awesome. And yeah, I think another cool edit that MrTroodon did was got rid of that kind of fatty dewlap, made the neck a little bit thinner, and edited the head a little bit, make it look a little bit more Stegosaurian, kind of more elongated and kind of thin. It makes it a little bit more Stegosaurian, which I believe does fit the specimens. And yeah, they kind of have a smaller size with a deeper snout and front lower jaws. Yeah, that high and narrow skull, so that does match the specimen at least. So yeah, that's pretty cool. So this guy was found in Zhongjiang, China in 1977, I believe. And there's been a few specimens kind of identified this since, and I believe it has been suggested to be a juvenile of Tyrannosaurus. But this guy lived with other stegosaurs such as Chungkingosaurus and Chungkingosaurus. Also animals like Mamenchisaurus and Omeosaurus, which are both different sauropods, like those really early sauropods that they were living with. And also a theropod that we've covered here before, Chungkingosaurus, which is a really big neo something sauropod. I'm not sure exactly where it's related. It's an earlier theropod, not quite related to things like... I think it's a Metricaranthid, I believe that's it. Yeah. That was all for filling the memory, folks. Pretty sure about that. But now we're going to move on to another MrTroodon remake as we quickly go and have a look. We have got Pentaceratops. So we can see some pretty nice changes there. I think he's going to go for a feed. That's alright. So you can tell this guy is very much based off the beast of the Mesozoic Pentaceratops, which is a very nice reconstruction, I think. The anatomy is perfect. I think if they just desaturated the colors a bit, it would be perfect. But I really like how this guy came out, so I think the texture's been updated. We could see some of the changes in the head. The crest has been a little bit more updated just to fit the Pentaceratops a little better. I believe this species that it's based off is there's only really Sternbergi, but there were other described, but they were really only lumped into Sternbergi. And I'm really big fan of the longer horns, because a lot of the time when we reconstruct dinosaur horns, we forget to add a lot of keratin. There's usually a lot of keratin that makes them look even more extreme and distinct. So yeah, I think it looks really, really nice. I like the horns that come down on here. It really gives it a unique shape, and I think it's got a slightly bigger head as well. The feet have been, I think, almost updated. There should be the digits. I know this is kind of a little bit more to fit the Jurassic Park style. But yeah, I quite like this guy regardless. You can see just like a little bit of the leaning of the legs, also a little bit more of the back, just to make it look a little bit more like its counterpart, its real life counterpart, which I think is a really nice look regardless. So Pentaceratops is known from the late Cretaceous, from about 76 to 73 million years ago, from the Kirtland Formation in New Mexico. And got to about 5 to 6 meters long, and has a pretty large skull. The skull of one specimen is about 2.3 meters, or 7.5 feet. And has a length of about 2 meters, or 7 feet, which is pretty cool. They got pretty big too, about 5 to 6 meters and 2.5 tons. So it's still pretty big. That's comparable to like a pretty large rhino. Even a little bit bigger than a large rhino. And these guys are kind of really cool. They're a chasmosaurian, so they're related to things like Chasmosaurus, and we'll have a little bit to talk about while he runs. It's related to Chasmosaurus and Triceratops, and its actual closest relative is Utaceratops, and there's been a couple described recently that kind of create a genetic line. I can't remember the genus names off the top of my head, but there's been a couple really new ones that are awesome. Look at this wonderful guy. I think he's very, very awesome. And these guys were obviously herbivorous, generally considered, and likely fed on all sorts of ferns, cycads, things like that, whatever they could get their beaks around. And lived with Parasaurolophus crinocriticis, also some small pachycephalosaurs, and Brigma was the big tyrannosaur that it lived with, or tyrannosaurid. And yeah, I think he just looks really, really nice. I think the flaming red kind of looks nice on this guy. And a really nice update on the animal. Looks much, much nicer. You can see the tail's also been shortened a little bit, I think. If we can compare to the genetic thing here. Let's forgive the spoilers. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P. See, look, a little bit of changes there. It's quite nice regardless. So yeah. That was both done by MrTroodon. And we have got next Balauriosaurus, which is done by NetRaptor and Ken Creative Art, who's done lots of team-ups to create all sorts of cool animals. So yeah, let's have a look at this one. So this is a really interesting animal here. So let's see if he's probably going to go for a drink by the looks of it. With a wonderful stegosaur. Chungkingosaurus, more like the Bastosaurus. Now let's have him a drink. There we are. Okay, so this is Balauriosaurus, I believe. This is a genus of lambeosaurine dinosaurs, so is related to animals like Lambeosaurus and Parasaurolophus. From the late Cretaceous, from the late Maastrichtian, or the pretty much the really end of the Cretaceous, where you find T-Rex and Triceratops, age rocks in Spain. So it's named from Spain, pretty cool place. The type species is Balauriosaurus canidoi, I believe you pronounce that, or how you pronounce it, and was described in 2010 by a bunch of Spanish researchers, which is pretty cool, and is known from a partial skull and some isolated fragments of the skeleton. And its name is kind of honors the paleontologist Jose Encayo Canado, I believe. I butchered the pronunciation because I'm definitely not Spanish, but still really cool that they honored the guy. And it's found in the layer of the Aren Formation dating back to the Upper Maastrichtian, so about 66 million years ago, so right at the end of the Cretaceous. So it consists of a skull with some fragmentary lower jaws. And well, from what we can tell about it, it's still a really cool animal. It's a medium-sized uranarthropod, and it's described to have really two distinct features, like the cheekbone has like a rare projection with a hook-like upper edge, and the lower slope is narrow with a D shape. And is from the same formation as Inosaurus, which is a related species, though are not identical, since you can kind of tell them apart. And in terms of cladistics, it seems to be an early relative of things of like Parasaurolophus. Seems to be an early relative. There's within Lambeosaurine, there's Parasaurolophony and Lambeosaurine. So Parasaurolophony would have led to animals like Chungkingosaurus and Parasaurolophus, and then Lambeosaurine would have led to animals like Lambeosaurus, Corythosaurus, and Velifrons. Those are good examples of Lambeosaurine. And these guys were kind of on that way, generally related. Well, they're definitely later than Parasaurolophus, because Parasaurolophus probably went extinct by these guys came around, since we don't have Parasaurolophus in Hell Creek. But it seems to have anatomy more similar to the basal members of that group. So related to things like Asunosaurus, so it could be like this European, more basal clade of Lambeosaurines, which is pretty cool. Or Parasaurolophony, that might be the better one. But yeah, still a really cool animal regardless. And I think that tells you a lot about them. Oh, and we wanted to go normal. And obviously, since we only have the lower jaw and some skull fragments, kind of can't really tell too much about the animal's relatedness and stuff, and what it looked like. I think this is still a fun reconstruction. I really like the colors. I do like my basic colors. I feel like a lot of people just want to make dinosaurs as bright as possible, just to try and make them visually interesting. But I really like how the orange there, the white, really does contrast. I think that's a very nice patterning in terms of getting your interest, like bringing the interest to the head. So yeah, really nice. So now we're going to be moving on to some not herbivores. We've got some weirdies. We're doing it a little bit different today. We're going a little bit off the rocker. We've got a couple little funny animals that we're going to have a look at today. So this one was done by Serbia. Really funky little guy. We've got Uruguaynathus. Like a very funky little man. We can barely even see him. So we'll wait until he stops over here and then we can get a real good look at him. See if we can spot him. There he is. Little fella. I believe he's based on the Homo sapien. There we are. There he is. Look at the little man. So Uruguaynathus is a very awesome little pterosaur that came from the late Jurassic period. And I believe is name Uruguaynathus in Greek means without jaw, and it has a very small, without tail. Oh, so it's without tail jaw. Is that well, that's weird. But anyway, it's usually in reference to its particularly small tail there, because as you guys may know, a lot of the Rhamphorhynchoids and a lot of those earlier pterosaurs had very, very long tails, and then they eventually kind of just evolved these shorter tails with the later, like things like Quetzalcoatlus and a lot of those later pterosaurs didn't lost that long tail. But yeah, still really, really cool regardless. And yeah, let me have a look at this guy. We'll have a look around him. So obviously based on the homocephale rig, it looks really, really nice. Really, really cute. Look at those eyes there. Very, very funky boy he is. So these guys have these kind of short heads with pin-like teeth that they was believed to use to catch insects. So they seem to be very much like the nightjars or potentially bats of the not the Cretaceous, the Jurassic, eating those kind of animals. And having these short tails that they had would have been kind of like a Pycna style in birds, so that would have allowed them to be more maneuverable. And I believe the specimen itself is a little bit more than a foot long, so a 35 centimeter wingspan. Still really, really cool. And they also have these huge eye sockets, as you can see here. They are used for, obviously, seeing better, so they can kind of see potentially in low light conditions, such as in the forest canopies or even at night, potentially. Could potentially be nocturnal. It's a very common interpretation. And yeah, these are related in their own group. They're called the Ignorantinae, and they're related to animals like Jalopterus and other animals that are very similar to this, like with the short wings and look kind of similar to nightjar like pterosaurs, which is very, very cool. And what's also very interesting as well is that it's a lot of people talk about how this developed into growth rates as well, and it shows that these developmental stages were rapidly progressing compared to modern day birds. So that means young pterosaurs would have been basically born right out the box and come out ready to go as they come out right the box like that. So they would be ready to go and ready to hunt and ready to find whatever food they want. But compared to birds, which need most of them are pretty much born attritial. That means they need some sort of parental care, like feeding and stuff, before they can get big and go off and be adult birds. But yeah, I think this is really interesting. It also shows these guys also had great flexibility because they needed to catch insects, which obviously can be very maneuverable. So these guys were very flexible and maneuverable on the wing. So they're able to catch insects and maneuver between trees and things. So yeah, it really tells you a lot about their ecology based on their anatomy. So watch them have a drink. Yeah. One of the main things wrong with this is obviously, like the giant moa that I mentioned a while ago and stuff. This guy definitely had pycna fibers, which are kind of either feather-like or analogous to feathers. They seem to be somewhat similar. And yeah, I think he's over there. Look at him. Yeah, it's somewhat similar, or if not the same thing, depending who you ask. We just don't have the fossils. But yeah, really, really cool animal regardless, and I think it's cool to see it in a game. I think it's actually based on the Chungkingosaurus. Anyway, now we're going to move on to another animal, Jasuberbia. Jasuba. We have got Hesperonis. Now he's going for a different feed. Oh, I think missed that out, but yeah, we'll watch him and when he gets his food. There we are. Look at this funky fellow. We have got Hesperonis. A really funky fellow. So, Hesperonis, which names means western bird, is a very cormorant-like bird superficially, or bird, or quote-unquote, that you can see here, that spanned from the first half of the Campanian, so lived between 83 and 78 million years ago. So this lived in the Western Interior Seaway, where there was a big seaway going through the middle of North America that was quite shallow and full of life. You find animals like a lot of mosasaurs, lots of plesiosaurs and things like that, which is really, really interesting. And there's barely 9 species described, which have been recovered from rocks in North America and some in Russia. But I believe the species here is the most common one described as regalis. So it's Hesperonis regalis. And these guys got quite large. They were quite large birds that would be about 1.8 meters or 5 feet 9 in length. 5 foot 9. Yep, my words get a bit mangled today, but anyway, they have very weird. They're kind of similar to penguins, but very swim much more like cormorants or loons. So, or grebes is another good example. So, they have very, very powerful hind limbs, as you can see here, and very, very reduced wings. So they use their feet much more like grebes and had these like lobed toes that they use to move around and kick around. Either webbed or lobed. It's kind of, I don't know. They went with the lobed hypothesis here, which is pretty cool. So they would use that to swim around and catch food. And they were really very interesting. They had teeth as well. Like other many Mesozoic birds, they didn't quite lose their teeth like birds that we know today. And in this lineage, they had a very different arrangement of teeth. So they had teeth in like a longitudinal groove and rather than individual sockets, which seems to be convergent evolution with mosasaurs, which is also pretty cool. And this suggests that these guys also did have a keratinous beak in certain places, so it does mean like a beak and teeth can kind of exist. But this is definitely an outlier and not really comparable to modern birds, which is pretty cool. So the first Hesperonis was found in 1871 with Othniel Charles Marsh, as you guys will know, one of the main figures in the Bone Wars, and was found in all sorts of different places. Across part of the Bone Wars as well. They kind of like split it up and really wanted to fight about it. But yeah, there's many different species in this genus. I'm not going to go through all of them. And it's mainly found through North America. It could potentially be lumped. But these guys lived in primarily marine sediments and lived in shallow seas such as the West Interior Seaway or the North Sea, places like that. Which are found from subtropical to tropical waters, which is much warmer than today because it was the late Cretaceous, and there was more of a greenhouse effect, a little bit more warmer. Not necessarily, there wasn't no ice, it wasn't like a green world, but it was kind of a lot more warmer than it is today. And the youngest species of Hesperonis, or the youngest specimens, are known from inland freshwater formations, deposits in the freshwater formation, or foremost formation, which means they may have eventually moved on into freshwater habitats as the Western Interior Seaway pretty much dried up. So, as I mentioned, you can see if you compare these to loons, they have a much more similar style comparable to grebes and things like that. Grebes are very interesting birds. They have their very, very powerful legs that they use to kick around and foot-propelled divers. But they may have been really gangly and weird on land, but we just kind of haven't seen one walk. It's been kind of a meme that they kind of run around on their bellies and stuff, but it seems that they may have been able to walk more upright like cormorants rather than sliding around their bellies like modern seals or penguins. But yeah, still really, really cool. And another little discovery that we'll talk about, there was a Hesperonis leg bone that was found with bite marks from a young polycotylid pterosaur. Not pterosaur, plesiosaur, something like Dolichorhynchops or something like that. And it showed that actually got an infection. And that shows that it survived the attack, but it got infected, and that could have led to its death. It may not have, we just don't know. But still really interesting little story that we can get from some fossil bones. I think that's very, very awesome. So yeah, we're going to watch this guy eat. And I know he should have feathers, but not really good feather support in this game. But I do like the colours on it. Came out quite nice. Very interesting fellow. I'm a big fan. So yeah, now we're going to move on. We got the really cool pack that... let's check the guys. So this is like a Morrison pack. So these three animals are all from the Morrison formation. And this pack was made by Ken's Creative Art, the Anzu God, and Tiny Gamer 2003, which is very, very interesting. Taking a look at all kind of the underrated and unknown animals from the Morrison Formation, because we all see the Morrison Formation, we see all these big animals like Allosaurus, Brachiosaurus, Stegosaurus, we often forget some of these little guys, and it's cool to give them a little bit of a spotlight. So we're going to be starting today with Nanosaurus. So there's a funky little fellow we got here. Where's he running off to? I think he's going for food. Don't want to interrupt him. So these guys are a neo-ornithischian dinosaur from the late Jurassic of the Morrison Formation, as I mentioned. And the only species in this genus is Nanosaurus agilis, which I believe means agile small lizard, which is a fun name. Okay, let's stop him before he jumps on. A very, very interesting little fella there. So, Nanosaurus is known from material from all parts of the body, which include two really good skeletons. And these guys, although the skull is pretty poorly known, these guys were pretty small, about 2 meters long and less than 10 kilograms in weight, but are considered to be very bipedal, with these short forelimbs that you can see here. And they have the small head with leaf-shaped cheek teeth that they used to obviously eat and process plants, and very similar to other neo-ornithischians such as Hypsilophodon, Talacan, and Thescelosaurus. They had thin plates that were along the side of their ribs. They're called intercostal plates, and they're believed to be cartilaginous, which is pretty cool. So these guys have a very, very long taxonomic history. They were first named in 1877 by a good fellow friend, Othniel Charles Marsh, and there was like a bunch of different you know how taxonomy is. It can get very, very interesting. There were new species named. One was actually, a bit of it was described as a crocodile, when it's actually not part of the species. It's very, very interesting taxonomic history. But considering what we know now, it's considered to be quite basal to Neo-Ornithischia, so related to animals such as Agilosaurus and Lesosaurus, and like an early relative of things like Thescelosaurus and animals like that that was on the way. Still a really, really cool animal regardless. So as I mentioned, these guys lived in the Morrison Formation, where you'd find all sorts of, it was a very semi-arid area with flat floodplains and such, and you'd find animals such as Pentaceratops, Brachiosaurus, Camarasaurus, Diplodocus, all these cool animals, and it lived in a very rich formation, and it's believed to be a small swift herbivore, but could have been omnivorous, interpreted by Barker, but we kind of just don't know. We don't really have the skills, and animal diet's a lot more flexible and wide than we give them credit for. But yeah, I think a really nice little animal, gives a little spotlight, perfect for your Morrison enclosures if you want to make those in Jurassic World Evolution. So now we're going to move on to another little Morrison fellow, made by the same three kings. We have got Koparion. So this guy is a very, very interesting little man. Let's see him have a go. He's going to run for a feed, I think. Can't even see him now. There he is. So Koparion is a very, very interesting little fellow. So he's interpreted as a genus of small Coelurosaurian dinosaur. So that includes animals like therizinosaurs, birds, ornithomimids, and tyrannosaurs. And is also been interpreted as potentially a troodontid, which is also very, very interesting. And if that's true, it'd be a very, very early troodontid. So these guys are found, well, this guy was found in the late, again, the Morrison Formation in Utah, but is only known from a single isolated tooth. So it's very, very interesting. So this guy was found in the Bushy Basin member from the Morrison Formation. It's about 151 million years ago, and the specimen consists of a single maxillary tooth crown with the root is missing and cannot be determined whether it's a left or right tooth. And to describe the tooth, it's 2 millimeters tall and very recurved. It has features that are kind of very similar to other troodontids, such as the horizontal grooves and these little grooves and stuff as well, and also the blood pits that are separated on the teeth. So it's very, very superficially, at least, looks like a troodontid. But it's believed to be a troodontid based on the anatomy of the teeth, which would make it the oldest, at the time it was the oldest known troodontid, and it was the first of the group discovered in the Jurassic. And it was proposed to be troodontids present in the Jurassic were protected by the original origin of birds theory, believing that troodonts and birds were closely related. But within this context, it was kind of changed a little bit, so there was a kind of a temporal paradox happened, where the close relationship of the oldest known bird, Archaeopteryx, lived much earlier than animals such as Dinosuchia, which included Deinonychosauria, which included the Dromaeosaurs and the troodonts. But there has also been non-fragmentary Jurassic troodontid material that has been reported from China, so it seems that these troodontids may have had a lot of an early history than we consider. So we have some evidence of Jurassic troodontids, which is very, very cool, and especially them living in the Morrison as well. Could have been little fluffy boys, but clearly we don't have feathers, as I mentioned. A really cool little animal to just... it's not necessarily the most flamboyant or interesting animal. It just tells you a lot about how dinosaurs are related to each other, and shows that troodontids were living with animals like Brachiosaurus, which is really awesome. So yeah, now we can move on to our second to last animal, which is really, really awesome. We have got the last one in our pack of Morrison animals. We've got, I'm going to butcher this probably, but it's called Tanycolagreus. I believe how it's pronounced that. So this is another small Coelurosaurian dinosaur. So as I mentioned, related to like Therizinosaurs, Tyrannosaurids, birds, animals like that. And he's going for the meat. But anyway, we'll talk a little bit about him. He was found in 1995, where they found a partial skeleton. Let's get him over here. We'll have a look at him anyway. A partial skeleton. It was found, it was believed to be a specimen of Coelurosaurus, but in 2001 it described its own species, Tanycolagreus, I believe how you pronounce it, Topwilsoni, and was actually kind of described by Kenneth Carpenter and a lot of those guys. There has been some other specimens that have been found that gives it like a really nice skeleton, but it's believed to be very similar to an animal like Stochosaurus. If you guys played Zoo Tycoon 2, you guys know him. He's like an early Tyrannosaur. We'll talk about him anyway. So, they believe the holotype of this guy, which is believed to be a subadult, is about 3.3 meters long in life, though there has been one specimen that is believed to be a larger individual that is about 4 meters long and weigh about 120 kilograms or 260 pounds. And it's not sure how big these guys can get, because both the specimens are kind of... we don't know if they're truly adults or not, or subadults. We know that we don't really have an upper size limit for these guys, but still really cool animals regardless. So they also have this quite blunt snout that you see here, that kind of look very vaguely Coelurosaurian, lightly built legs, and they are medium sized. They've been described as kind of very similar to Coelurus. Also some differences from Ornitholestes. So kind of that mid-sized theropod, kind of typical look, but still a really cool animal regardless. A little bit of a boxy face and things. So this guy was originally described as Coeluridae, but later was showed to have more primitive features. But also in 2007, there was a more detailed phylogenetic study, the analysis to take a look at these guys, and it shows they would have been more basal to animals like Tyrannosauria, so that would have been more similar to animals like Dilong and Guanlong, those really, really early genuses of early tyrannosaurs. So these would have been on the line to become those animals, but later analyses has kind of backed up the older hypothesis, and they are very basal in their position of Coelurosauria. Still, a really cool animal regardless, and we'll watch them eat. Yum yum yum. I love the Herrerasaurus so rigged. Let's have a look at that. So before we move on, I'm going to make sure this was the Morrison pack. All done by these three people. Ken Creative Art, the Anzu God, and Tiny Gamer 2003. So last and most definitely not least, we have got kind of a really interesting edit. It's kind of a combination between an accuracy edit and a more Jurassic World universe or Jurassic Park universe edits, so it's kind of a combination, so I decided to show it here as the last one. We've got Dreadnoughtus. So look at this wonderful big man. So if you guys don't know Dreadnoughtus, he's a very awesome fellow. Dreadnoughtus is a giant titanosaur sauropod, so related to animals like Alamosaurus and Argentinosaurus and Paludatitan. So this guy was discovered from two partial skeletons from the Upper Cretaceous, from the Campanian to the Maastrichtian, approximately 84 to 66 million years ago. So much later than a lot of the other titanosaurs. From the Cerro Falteza Formation in the Santa Cruz province of Argentina, and is one of the largest terrestrial vertebrates known, and is actually one of the best known largest titanosaurs, and because it's known from a very complete skeleton. Very, very interesting. And these remains of this guy was discovered in 2005, and were transported in 2009 when they were described in 2017, I believe, when it was described. And obviously being a large titanosaur, it's often plagued by lots of weight estimates. So a lot of the weight estimates of this guy have been placed between... the most recent weight estimate is about 49,000 kilograms, or 49 tons, and 10,000 or 108,227 pounds. And I believe the length of this guy is about 30 meters, I believe. That's the weight, but the length is about 26 meters. 26 meters, and let's stop this. Put him on slow. We'll get a good look at him as we talk about him. Look at this wonderful fellow. A really big man. I'm really happy with how this one came out. But yeah, very, very huge. About 26 meters long, or 85 feet long. And stood about 2 stories tall. Very, very huge. The only animal that is known with a longer humerus is Balauriosaurus. And it kind of looks very similar to Brachiosaurus in that extent. Really, really awesome. It's really, really complete as well. About 45.3% of the specimen is known, I believe. So that's pretty much about 45.5%, so a little under half, which is huge for most large sauropods. A lot of them are known from less than 10%. So this gives you a really good idea of what the animal looked like and a better estimates of its size. And compared to animals like Argentinosaurus, is only known from like 5% of its skeleton completeness. Still a really cool animal regardless. So you can see here it's got a quite distinctive posture. This is believed to be how it looked. A lot of people will reconstruct sauropods with their necks out like this, but titanosaurs seem to be kind of almost pseudo-brachiosauron in that extent, and they put their necks up like this. And they have quite cool distinguishing features. They have very interesting air sacs that have gone down their neck and in their bones, which helps, similar to birds, that helps them to breathe, but it also makes their bones a lot lighter. In some sauropods, their bones could be like 90% air. That pretty much makes them as strong but as light as possible, so they'll be able to easily move them, taking up less energy. And they have these really interesting severons that they use to support muscles and things like that. Really, really cool. And what's really, really funny about this guy is that he's during cladistics, so he's described as a derived basal titanosaur. So it was not quite on the way of becoming animals like Lithenstona, which would lead to animals such as Saltosaurus, Alamosaurus, and Rapetosaurus from Madagascar, but it's more basal titanosaur, so related to things like Fucolongosaurus, Andiosaurus, and everyone's favorite largest dinosaur, Argentinosaurus. But there have been some other evidence that suggests that may have, and may be related to animals such as Gondwana titan, or may actually be more closely related to other Lithensaurians. It's kind of taxonomy be taxonomy, but it's very, very interesting regardless. And from what we know of titanosaurs as well, just to go over this model for a little accuracy updates, I would love to see, because this is a rig edited, I would love to see a remake of this, like rig edited titanosaur, but make it more accurate to how we know Dreadnoughtus to look like, this is not too far off, but we know that the feet would have been much more like fleshy horseshoes, not in these feet. The legs would also be much thinner as well and much more columnar, or like columns. The skull, I believe, would be a little bit more diplodocid-like, a little bit more leaner and meaner, or wider, not quite boxy like that. And we know from other titanosaurs that there would have been osteoderms, or bits of bone, going down their backs, like things like Saltosaurus as well, and could have been quite big too. So that could be something that would be cool to add to make the different textures. But overall, a really, really awesome animal, I think. That was just my constructive criticism. So, what we also know about this is the animal was still growing as it died. So it's believed that a lot of the bones that would have fused as an adult didn't fuse. So the specimen that we have of Dreadnoughtus is actually not fully grown yet. And no one knows how big they could have gotten afterwards, as a lot of these large sauropods is believed they potentially may have been growing all throughout their lives. So we really don't know the true extent of the size of these animals, but still really, really cool regardless. So, it's believed that these two Dreadnoughtus that make up the specimen, or the two specimens of Dreadnoughtus that we have, were buried quickly during like a flood or something like that. And these guys have also been found with a bunch of small theropod teeth, such as from Megaraptorans, specifically an Orcoraptor, which is believed to come from the same formation. But yeah, I think it's still a really, really awesome animal, and I think this mod really, really just shows how beautiful these titanosaurs really are. And really, also, since this is based off the design from Jurassic World Dominion, from that preview, I think that also ties into the movie as well, so it's kind of like a good hybrid of showing off some movie stuff. Because the movie, I believe, part of the marketing for Jurassic World Dominion is trying to be a little bit more accurate, even though they had Giganotosaurus fight Tyrannosaurus in the past when they didn't even meet, but at least they're trying. But still, I think this is a really nice Dreadnoughtus design, and cool to see the animal promoted in the series. I think he's pretty awesome, so I think we will just wait for him to finish eating, and I think it'd be a great place to end the video. So yeah, look at him, he's done now. So yeah, I think this will be a really, really great place to end the video. So yeah, I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys like and subscribe. Always remember to click the little bell icon to get notified when I upload anything. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys like and subscribe, and bye-bye.